to what is a process, we should know what are the structures in the human digestive system. The human digestive system comprises of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. Alimentary canal comprises of mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine and the large intestine, whereas the associated glands include the salivary glands, gastric glands, livers and pancreas. The parts of the alimentary canal plays a major role in the digestion. The associated glands or the accessory glands lie outside the alimentary canal. Under this, we will be learning about teeth, tongue, salivary glands and the esophagus. The mouth has teeth and tongue, and the salivary glands are also present inside the mouth. The tongue has gustatory receptors that perceive the sense of taste. The tongue helps in turning over the food so that saliva can be properly mixed in it. Teeth helps in breaking down the food into smaller particles so that swallowing of food becomes easier. There are 4 types of teeth in our human body. The incisor teeth, which are used for cutting the food, the canine teeth that are used for tearing the food or for cracking hard substances, the premolars that are used for coarse grinding of food, and the molars that is used for fine grinding for food. Coming to our next one, the salivary glands that secrete saliva. Saliva makes the food slippery, which makes it easy to swallow the food. Saliva also contains enzyme salivary amylase or the ptyalin. Salivary amylase digests starch and converts it into sucrose. Esophagus helps in taking food from the mouth to the stomach by the peristaltic movement. So, what is peristaltic movement now? Peristaltic movement is the rhythmic contraction of muscles that line the alimentary canal, which in turn help them to push the food forward. To sum up, as I said, mouth contains teeth, tongue, salivary glands, and to take the food from the mouth to the stomach, we have our esophagus. So the mouth helps in intake of food, the teeth helps in chewing or grinding, tongue rolls the food and helps in perception of taste. Finally, when it reaches the salivary glands, it secretes saliva and helps in swallowing or pushing down of the food. Over here, the starch gets converted into maltose, a sugar. Finally, the esophagus takes it from the mouth to the stomach via the peristaltic movement. Now let's talk about stomach. Stomach is a bag-like organ. Highly muscular walls of the stomach help in churning the food. The walls of the stomach secrete hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid kills the germs which may be present in the food. Moreover, it makes the medium inside the stomach as acidic. The acidic medium is necessary for gastric enzymes to work. The enzymes pepsin secreted in the stomach does partial digestion of protein. The mucus secreted by the walls of the stomach saves the inner lining of the stomach from getting damaged from the hydrochloric acid. Stomach is a bag-like organ. It has highly muscular walls. It secretes 3 enzymes. The walls of the stomach secrete hydrochloric acid. To sum up, now let's talk about small intestine, liver and pancreas. Small intestine is a highly coiled tube-like structure. The small intestine is longer than the large intestine, but its lumen is smaller than that of the large intestine. The small intestine is divided into 3 parts like duodenum, jejunum and ileum. Coming to the liver. Liver is the largest organ in the human body. The liver manufactures bile which gets stored in the gallbladder. From the gallbladder, bile is released as and when required. Coming to pancreas. Pancreas is situated below the stomach. It secretes pancreatic juice that contains many digestive enzymes. So what happens over here? The bile and pancreatic juice go to the duodenum through a hepatopancreatic duct. The bile breaks down fat into smaller particles. This process is termed as emulsification of fat. After that, the enzyme lipase digests fat into fatty acids and glycerol. Trypsin and chymotrypsin are enzymes which digest proteins into amino acids. Complex carbohydrates are digested into glucose. The major part of digestion takes place in the duodenum. No digestion takes place in the jejunum. The inner walls in the ileum is projected into numerous finger-like structures called the villi. Villi increases surface area inside the ileum so that optimum absorption can take place. Moreover, villi can also reduce the lumen of the ileum so that food can stay for a longer duration in it. Digested food is absorbed by villi. As I said, the intestinal enzymes breaks down carbohydrates to glucose, fats to fatty acids and glycerol, and proteins to amino acids. The small intestine receives secretion from the liver and the pancreas. The villi helps in absorption of food into the blood. These villi are finger-like projections. The liver secretes the bile juice and the pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice. Over here, the large fat globules gets converted into small fat globules via emulsification. Now the pancreatic juice has trypsin and lipase. Trypsin converts proteins to peptones and lipase converts fats to glycerol. Coming to the large intestine is smaller than the small intestine. The undigested food goes to the large intestine. Some water and salt are absorbed by the walls of the large intestine. After that, the undigested food goes to the rectum, from where it is expelled out through the anus. Large intestine absorbs excess of water. The rest of the material is removed from the body via anus. This is termed as egestion. That's all for today. We are towards the end of our discussion. We saw about digestion in human beings in detail. Starting from our mouth to the stomach, small intestine, liver, pancreas and the large intestine, we saw the process of digestion in human beings. Hope it was easy to understand. Today we will be dealing with respiration in detail. Whereas our previous video was regarding digestion in human beings. Those who haven't watched our video, I'll put up the link in the description box. Please don't forget to watch about digestion in human beings. Respiration, life processes. So, what is respiration? Respiration is a process by which a living being utilizes the food to get energy. Respiration is an oxidation reaction in which carbohydrate is oxidized to produce energy. Mitochondria is the site of respiration and the energy released is stored in the form of ATP. ATP is stored in the mitochondria and is released as per the need. Now, what are the types of respiration? Respiration can be aerobic, anaerobic, or in plants and in human beings. Steps of respiration: breaking down of glucose into pyruvate, fate of pyruvic acid. Steps of respiration: respiration can be in two steps: breaking down of glucose into pyruvate and the fate of pyruvic acid. The first step, breaking down of glucose into pyruvate. This step happens in the cytoplasm. Glucose molecule is broken down into pyruvic acid. Glucose molecule is composed of 6 carbon atoms, while the pyruvic acid is composed of 3 carbon atoms. Now, what is the fate of pyruvic acid? Further breaking down of pyruvic acid takes place in the mitochondria, and the molecules formed are dependent upon the type of respiration in a particular organism. Respiration are of two types: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Respiration involves gaseous exchange, that is, intake of oxygen from the atmosphere and the release of carbon dioxide. This is termed as breathing, And the second one is breakdown of simple food in order to release energy inside the cell. This is called as cellular respiration. Now let's talk about aerobic respiration. This type of respiration happens in the presence of oxygen. Pyruvic acid is converted into carbon dioxide. Energy is released and water molecules is also formed at the end of this process. Anaerobic respiration. This type of respiration happens in the absence of oxygen. Pyruvic acid is either converted into ethyl alcohol or lactic acid. Ethyl alcohol is usually formed in case of anaerobic respiration in microbes like yeast or bacteria. Lactic acid is formed in some microbes as well as in some muscle cells. So what happens is glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, gets converted into pyruvate, a 3-carbon molecule, releasing energy. Pyruvate in yeast, which has lack of oxygen, gets converted into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and releases energy. Pyruvate in muscles, which has lack of oxygen, gets converted into lactic acid and releases energy. Coming to pyruvates in mitochondria, in the presence of oxygen, it gets converted into carbon dioxide, water, and releases energy. So, why do we get pain in the leg muscles while running? When someone runs too fast, he may experience throbbing pain in the leg muscles. This happens because of anaerobic respiration taking place in the muscles. During running, the energy demand from the muscle cells increases. This is compensated by anaerobic respiration and lactic acid is formed in this process. The deposition of lactic acid causes pain in the leg muscles. The pain subsides after taking rest for some time. Exchange of gases. For aerobic respirations, organisms need a continuous supply of oxygen and carbon dioxide produced during the process needs to be removed from the body. Different organisms use different methods for the intake of oxygen and expulsion of carbon dioxide. Diffusion is the method in which it is utilized by unicellular and some simple organisms. In plants, diffusion is utilized for exchange of gases. In complex animals, respiratory system does the job of exchange of animals. Gills are respiratory organs for fishes. Fishes takes in oxygen which is dissolved in water through the gills. Since availability of oxygen is less in the aquatic environment, the breathing rate of aquatic organisms is faster. Insects have a system of spiracles and tracheas which is used for taking in oxygen. Availability of oxygen is not a problem in the terrestrial environment, so breathing rate is lower as compared to in fishes. Terrestrial organisms use atmospheric oxygen for respiration, whereas aquatic organisms use dissolved oxygen for respiration. Coming to the human respiratory system. The human respiratory system is composed of a pair of lungs. These are attached to a system of tubes which open on the outside through the nostrils. Following are the main structures in the human respiratory system. In the nasal passage, we'll have nostrils, then we have pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and the alveoli as a part of the human respiratory system. Now let's look on to what happens in each. Nostrils. There are two nostrils which converge to form a nasal passage. The inner lining of the nostrils is lined by hair and remains wet due to mucus secretion. The mucus in the hair helps in filtering the dust particles out from the inhaled air. Further, air is warmed up when it enters the nasal passage. Coming to pharynx. It is a tube-like structure which continues after the nasal passage. Coming to larynx, this part comes after the pharynx, which is also called as your voice box. Next, let's talk about trachea. This is composed of rings of cartilage. Cartilaginous rings prevent the collapse of trachea in the absence of air. Bronchi. A pair of bronchi comes out from the trachea with one bronchus going to each lung. Bronchioles. A bronchus divides into branches and sub-branches inside the lungs, and these are termed as bronchioles. Alveoli. These are the air sacs at the end of the bronchioles. The alveolus is composed of a very thin membrane, and it is the place where blood capillaries open. This is alveolus, where the oxygen mixes with the blood and carbon dioxide exits from the blood. The exchange of gases in alveoli takes place due to pressure differential. So, to sum up the passage, nostrils to the nasal passage via the nasal cavity enters the pharynx, then the larynx, comes the trachea, bronchi, lungs and the bronchioles, and finally to the alveolar sacs, which finally enters to the blood capillaries. Now let's talk about the breathing mechanism. The breathing mechanism of lung is controlled by the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. The diaphragm is a membrane which separates the thoracic chamber from the abdominal cavity. When the diaphragm moves down, the lungs expand and the air is inhaled. When the diaphragm moves up, the lungs contract and the air is exhaled. Differentiate between inhalation and exhalation. During inhalation, thoracic cavity or the chest cavity expands, whereas in exhalation, it contracts. The ribs lift upwards in inhalation, whereas in exhalation, the ribs moves downwards. The diaphragm becomes flat in shape, whereas it becomes dome-shaped. Volume of the lung increases and air enters the lung, whereas volume of the lung decreases and air exits from the lungs. As we see here, diaphragm moves up, ribs move in and the air moves out. This is termed as exhalation. When the diaphragm moves down, the ribs move out and the air moves in. This is termed as inhalation. So this is all about respiration. To sum up, what did we learn in this discussion? We learned the definition of respiration. We also learned about aerobic and anaerobic respiration. We learned respiration in different organisms like fish, terrestrial organisms, insects, etc. And then we learned about the human respiratory system, the structures in it and the mechanism behind it. Discussion will again be on life processes. The topic for the day is transportation. We have already completed digestion and respiration and the mode of nutrition in detail. If you haven't watched our video, I'll put the link in the description box. Please do watch it. So, coming to today's topic of discussion, transportation. The circulatory system of human beings and the transportation in plants both differ from each other. Human beings, like other multicellular organisms, need a regular supply of food and oxygen. This function is performed by a circulatory system or a transport system. To transportation in human beings, the circulatory system is responsible for the transport of various substances in human beings. It is composed of the heart, arteries, veins and the blood capillaries. Blood plays the role of carrier of substances. Now let's talk about heart. Heart is a muscular organ which is composed of cardiac muscles. It is so small that it can fit inside an adult's breast. The heart is a pumping organ which pumps the blood. The human heart is composed of 4 chambers: right atrium, the right ventricle, the left ventricle and the left atrium. So what is systole and diastole? Systole is the contraction of cardiac muscles and the diastole is the relaxation of cardiac muscles. Now what are arteries? These are thick-walled blood vessels which carry oxygenated blood from the heart to different organs. Pulmonary arteries are an exception because they carry deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, where oxygenation of blood takes place. What are veins? Veins are thin-walled blood vessels which carry deoxygenated blood from different organs to the heart. Pulmonary veins again here is an exception because they carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Valves are present in the veins to prevent the backflow of blood. So, now what happens in the human circulatory system? The human circulatory system contains a pumping organ, the heart, the blood vessels, arteries and veins, and the blood vessels, blood and lymph. What happens is, so from the body, first the deoxygenated blood enters the right atrium via the vena cava. In the right atrium, first the cardiac muscles are relaxed. This is termed as diastole, as I have already mentioned in my previous slide. And then it gets contracts, and this is termed as systole. From the right atrium, this now enters to the right ventricle, and again diastole happens and then systole happens. It enters the lungs now. In the lungs, the oxygenated blood enters the left atrium and gets relaxed. That is diastole. And again it contracts in the left atrium. That is again our systole. So now it enters the left ventricle. It again gets relaxed and then contracts. And finally via the aorta, the oxygenated blood enters the body parts. Now again, from the body parts, the deoxygenated blood continues the same cycle. So, for a pictorial representation, the deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body enters through the vena cava to the right atrium. First, it gets relaxed and then the cardiac muscle contracts and then enters the right ventricle. Again, the cardiac muscle relaxes and then gets contracts and then enters the lungs, and over here the oxygen gets purified and the oxygenated blood now enters left atrium. Over here again the cardiac muscles gets relaxed and then again it gets contracts and then enters the left ventricle. Again over here it gets relaxed and then gets contracts, and via the aorta the oxygenated blood enters all parts of the body. So, now what are capillaries? Capillaries are the blood vessels which have single-celled walls. Blood is a connective tissue which plays the role of the carrier for various substances in the body. Blood is composed of plasma, blood cells and the platelets. As I have already said in my previous slide, blood is composed of plasma, blood cells and the platelets. This blood cells is again divided into red blood cells RBCs and the white blood cells WBCs. Now, what is a blood plasma? Blood plasma is a pale colored liquid which is composed of water. Blood plasma forms the matrix of the blood. What are platelets? Platelets are responsible for the blood coagulation. Blood coagulation is a defense mechanism which prevents excess loss of blood in case of an injury. Coming to the blood cells, as I have already said, there are two types, red blood cells and the white blood cells. Red blood cells, these are of red color because of the presence of hemoglobins, which is a pigment. Hemoglobin readily combines with oxygen and carbon dioxide. The transport of oxygen happens through hemoglobin. Some part of the carbon dioxide is also transported through the hemoglobin. Red blood cells is also called as red blood corpuscles. Coming to the white blood cells, which are also called as white blood corpuscles, these are pale white color and they play an important role in immunity. Now, what are lymph? Lymph is similar to blood, but RBCs are absent in lymph. Lymph is formed from the fluid which leaks from the blood capillaries and goes to the intercellular space in the tissues. This fluid is collected through lymph vessels and finally returned to the blood capillaries. Lymph also plays an important role in the immune system. Lymph, a yellowish fluid, escapes from the blood capillaries into the intercellular spaces that contains less proteins than blood. Lymph flows from the tissues to the heart, assisting in transportation and destroying germs. Now, what is double circulation? In the human heart, blood passes through the heart twice in one cardiac cycle. This type of circulation is termed as double circulation. One complete heartbeat in which all the chambers of the heart contracts and relax once is called a cardiac cycle. The heart beats about 72 times per minute in a normal adult. In one cardiac cycle, the heart pumps out 70 ml of blood and thus about 4,900 ml of blood in a minute. Double circulation ensures complete segregation of oxygenation. Double circulation ensures complete segregation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, which is necessary for optimum energy production in warm-blooded animals. So, that's all for today. Today's discussion will be again regarding life processes. We'll be dealing about excretion today. We have already put up the videos of life processes regarding mode of nutrition, digestion, respiration and transportation in our previous video. I will put up the link below in the description box. Those who haven't watched it, please do watch it. Coming to today's topic, excretion, life processes. Excretion in human beings. Removal of harmful waste from the body is called excretion. Many wastes are produced during various metabolic activities. These need to be removed in time because their accumulation in the body can be harmful and even lethal for an organism. The human excretory system. The human excretory system is composed of a pair of kidneys. A tube called ureter comes out of each kidney and goes to the urinary bladder. Urine is collected in the urinary bladder from which is expelled through the urethra as and when required. So, as I have already said in my previous slide, human excretory system consists of a pair of kidneys, urinary bladder, a pair of the ureter and a urethra. Coming to kidney. Kidney is a bean-shaped organ which lies near the vertebral column in the abdominal cavity. The kidney is composed of many filtering units called the nephrons. Nephrons is called the functional unit of kidney. Coming to the nephron, it is composed of a tangled mess of tubes and a filtering part called the glomerulus. The glomerulus is a network of blood capillaries to which renal artery is attached. The artery which takes blood to the glomerulus is called the afferent arteriole and the one receiving blood from the glomerulus is called as the efferent arteriole. The glomerulus is enclosed in a capsule-like portion called the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule extends into a fine tube which is highly coiled. Tubes from various nephrons converge into the collecting duct which finally goes to the ureter. Urine formation in kidney involves 3 steps: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and secretion. Glomerular filtration: nitrogenous waste, glucose, water, amino acid filter from the blood into the Bowman's capsule of the nephron. Tubular reabsorption: now useful substances from the filtrate are reabsorbed back by the capillaries surrounding the nephron. Secretion: extra water, salts are secreted into the tubule which opens up into the collecting duct and then into the ureter. Urine produced in the kidney passes through the ureters into the urinary bladder where it is stored until it is released to the urethra. The purpose of making urine is to filter out waste product from the blood such that urea which is produced in the liver. Hemodialysis. What is it? It is the process of purifying blood by an artificial kidney. It is meant for kidney failure patients. To sum up, excretion is the removal of harmful waste in the body. This need to be removed in time because accumulation can be harmful and even lethal. Coming to the human excretory system, it is composed of a pair of kidneys, a ureter which comes out of each kidney and the ureter enters into the urinary bladder. Urine is collected in the bladder and released or expelled out through the urethra. Kidney is a bean-shaped organ, lies near the vertebral column in the abdominal cavity. This composed of functional unit of kidney, the nephron. A nephron is a tangled mess of tubes and a filtering part called the glomerulus which is enclosed in a Bowman's capsule. Urine formation is of 3 steps: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption and secretion. Glomerular filtration, wastes are filtered In tubular reabsorption, useful substances are reabsorbed back by the capillaries, and in secretion, extra substances are released or expelled out. Hemodialysis is an artificial method of process of purifying blood in kidney. This is meant for patients with kidney failure. So that's all for today. This is all about excretion. Hope it was easy to understand. Let's meet again with another video. Until then, bye-bye.